Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us now. We were not speaking earlier, just getting set up. So thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. We're very, very pleased that you have taken the time to learn a little bit more about this. My name is Lily Locks. I'm our Deputy Commissioner of School Programs, and I've been joining you on the Commissioner's Superintendent calls for the last few weeks. As many of you know, we've been working on collectively as a state, grappling with instructional continuity and shared fantastic resources from districts across the state about how to do that. While we've been setting that up, we've also heard from districts that having something that's a little bit, the commissioner's been referring to it as an easy button or a more plug and play resource would be really helpful. And so we went over a little bit of this on the previous calls, but this is a much deeper dive than any of the pieces we've done on those larger calls. And we're very excited today to provide a little bit more information and take questions. So some of the same norms for the commissioner's calls are true here. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We may not be able to get to all of them while we're speaking, but we will certainly try to follow up. And again, are just grateful that you all are taking the time to engage. So with that, I'm actually going to speak very little on this call, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Kristen Dobson, who's our Associate Commissioner of Instructional Strategy. And Kristen and many other fantastic folks at TEA have clearly done a ton of work to bring this to life and are still working on lots of the pieces, as you'll see, but we're grateful for the feedback and questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Kristen.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Everyone can hear me okay? Yes? I heard I was quiet earlier. Yes. Okay, great. Wonderful. So yes, as Lily said, some of this is going to be repetitive from yesterday, but we are hoping to share more detail. So please hang with us while you can and let us know if you have questions. So before we dive into today, we just want to quickly cover our objectives. So first off, we want to make sure we provide an overview of the Texas home learning resources and supporting services that we've been developing. And then we really want to help support districts in determining if and how to best use Texas home learning in their local context. And so to the extent possible, we hope to be able to provide some support with thinking through the decision of using this resource. We also hope to provide some next steps for how you could potentially implement it with teachers, parents, and students, and then save some time to answer outstanding questions. So from an agenda perspective, we'll talk a little bit about the long-term vision for Texas home learning. We'll actually go to the website itself and do some navigation of the website so you can see how it looks and feels and how we actually get from to the different resources within there. We have built out some supports around the Texas home learning resources we've developed. So how do we think about selecting resources? What was our approach at a particular grade level and subject area? And what are some additional supports we're providing? We also have some additional details on shipping and print options that we've been able to pull together to provide districts with that optional service, as well as guidance on district decision-making and Q&A. So again, continue to ask questions as you have them throughout the presentation. So we're really going to start on the long-term vision, and we talked about this a little bit on the call yesterday, but do want to reiterate what we're thinking big picture. So we are thinking about the Texas home learning in 3 stages, a 1.0 version, a 2.0 version, and a 3.0 version. The 1.0 version is what we're mostly focusing on today. And this version is really a resource to provide teachers, parents, and students with something to help them finish out the rest of the school year. So it's set up in a 8 weeks of learning with activities scheduled for each day of those 8 weeks. In theory, a district could start using it as early as Monday and go throughout the middle of June, but they could adapt to whatever timeline that they would like. So it's 8 weeks of learning, really just focused on engaging students in daily routines to finish out the year. Then we hope to focus on a 2.0 version of the Texas home learning model. And this is really thinking about how to provide students to prepare them for next year. So you could almost think about this as the summer school option that we want to help support and develop. One of the things that we want to improve from the 1.0 version is emphasizing helping students access high quality text sets and novels at discounted state rates that we can incorporate into a 2.0 version. And so we're really thinking about this as a, either 4 to 8 weeks of learning plan. And we hope to transition the focus here next week, where we can really start to obtain feedback from you all about what you would need and want most in a 2.0 version of the model. And then lastly, we have a 3.0 version, if I can, a 3.0 version. And one of the things I do want to highlight here is that a 3.0 version is focused on resources for if for some reason school closures are happening into next school year. And I do want to just flag that this is entirely contingency planning. We don't have any indication that that is currently going to be the case. We are just thinking ahead to say, how can we help prepare districts and teachers in the situation that that does happen. So in this 3.0 version, we're really thinking about how do we provide supports and potentially home learning resources in the situation where in next academic year, we are continuing to have school closures. So again, this will be discussed in the coming weeks, but today we want to focus on 1.0. So I want to provide an overview of Texas Home Learning 1.0. In the presentation itself, there are slides that show screenshots, but I actually want to go to the site itself. So can you all see, did you all see me change from the PowerPoint to the website? Great. So as you all know, and you've seen this many times, on the COVID page under the Instructional Continuity Planning Framework Guidance, if you scroll all the way down, there's a new section on Texas Home Learning that we've built out at the bottom. It's going to have resources related to this project. We're going to post the webinar, and we'll post the recording of this webinar coming soon. But really, you can click on the Texas Home Learning website, which is also texasHomeLearning.org, so that makes it easy. But if you click on the Texas Home Learning website, that's how you get to our website right now. And this is what the home page looks like. So what I want to do is spend a little bit of time navigating through this home page to give you a sense of what's all included. So Texas Home Learning, we really start off the home page by focusing on the user, and our hope was to make it really easy for a parent or a student to know directly how to get to the resources that they were going to potentially be using in their home environment. So there's kind of 3 user perspectives: the parent and the student, the teacher and the district, with some additional information and that will be populating around questions that people may have as we continue to build this out. But let's say I'm a parent and or a student and I want to implement this in my household. I'm going to click on I'm a parent, I'm a student, and it's going to take you to 2 different options. So one of the things we know up front is that one of the biggest implications of how learning could look in a household is whether or not that household and or student has access to the technology they would need to support digital materials or not. And so the online materials are what you would select if you knew your child had access to the internet and a device to be able to work and complete learning online. And if not, and your child is more used to using paper and pencil in a school, they would look at the printed materials. So they can pick these options based on their local context. So I'm going to pick online for now. We'll come back to printed in a second. So then the next thing they can pick is the grade level of their student. So right now what we have built out in the website is pre-K through 5th grade. We have those built out and we have the first week of learning complete. So they're not completely finished, but there should be a good example in all of those grades. And then what you can see is in 6th through high school, we have the resources labeled coming soon, but we should have a sample week up for 6th through high school by the end of this week. So, so let's go into 1st grade. So once you go to a particular grade level site, I just want to highlight a couple things that you're going to be able to find. One of the first things you're going to be able to find is just an area at the top that flags for first-time visitors. They should take some time up front to complete a one-time setup process. So there's a big button at the top that you should only really need to click if you're coming for the first time and if you're just getting started with your home learning plan. So I'm going to click on that now just so you can see it. I'm going to make this a little bigger. What this shows us is there's generally 3 high-level steps we recommend that a parent and or a student think through before they get started with their 8 weeks of learning. So for step 1, we really focus on this creating all of your accounts. As a reminder, this is the online version. So making sure you have access to all of the digital resources you're going to need throughout the entire 8 weeks of learning. So if you have, for example, we'll have one resource in math and we may have another in ELA, and this will help you get set up all at once for all of them so that it doesn't become a disruption as you're actually doing your day-to-day plan whenever you start your learning. We'll come back to this in a second. For step 2, we actually include the high-level goals of the 8 weeks of learning. So what is the 8 weeks of learning going to cover? And then what's the parent's specific role in supporting that learning for their student, particularly recognizing that students in early grades may need a little more help to for example, to log in for the first time or to do certain activities. So wanting to make sure we clearly call out the parent's role so they know what to expect as they go through the 8 weeks of learning. And then the final step is really focusing on helping establish daily routines. So what we really want to emphasize here is that for a particular student, our hope is that they can follow the exact same daily schedule throughout the entire 8 weeks of learning so that they have that routine in place and understand what to expect day to day. So as we build out activities in all of our daily plans, they will follow whatever the recommended daily schedule is for that grade level, and they will follow that exact same schedule every day. So we really want parents to think through these kind of 3 big steps to prepare for their 8-week plan and do this before they start their daily and their weekly learning. I do want to quickly go back up to just this first section around the account setup because there is a level more detail here that we provide. So I'm going to click on this see account setup instructions for a particular grade. What we've done here is actually provided a little more information for how to actually get your accounts set up. So we give some general guidance on what a parent and or a student should do to prepare to get their account set up. So things like making sure you have access to a device, a working email, you set aside the appropriate time to do all the logins, you have a pencil and paper ready to write down your username and password and that sort of stuff. And then what we've done is we've listed every single resource here that you're going to find throughout your entire 8-week plan. So our hope is that if you're going through your account setup for the very first time, you're going to do it for all of these resources, but then you're never going to have to go back and do it throughout your 8 weeks of learning. So for each resource, you'll be able to click on it, and there will be a PDF that includes step-by-step instructions for how to start logging in. So there'll be a step, and then we often try to include a picture of exactly what a parent should see on the website as they're going through each of the individual steps for the first time. So these are built out instructions that we will have for parents to get and students to help get them set up for all of their digital accounts. So, and then we also include the resources where you don't need an account, but we may still provide access to that resource. So I'm going to go back really quick. So when I push the back button, it'll take me again to this high level 3 steps of learning. And then at the very bottom, I can also return back to the daily schedules. So reminder, when I clicked on when I was a parent and I said I want an online version of materials and I want to be looking at the first grade, I got to this page. I already did my, my one-time learning setup steps. Now I'm going to come down and I'm actually going to see what I can do to support my 8-week plan. So what we will have at the top is just this quick links chart, and it's going to take you to whatever week it could take a parent or a student to whatever week of learning they're on. As a reminder, we have only built out the first week right now, so you'll only see 1 week in this site, but once we have all weeks built out, this will be a helpful guiding tool. And then we scroll down and we see what week 1 of learning will look like. So what we've done here is We have activities and steps included Monday through Friday. And again, we've built it out by subject. And this schedule should directly align with that daily schedule we talked about on the setup instructions. So every day, for example, at 10 to 10:30, you're going to have your snack and your break. Every day at 10:30, you're going to have your math lesson. So really, our hope is that a parent could come and on week 1 on Monday, they just kind of follow the instructions. Follow the instructions for what they should be doing at each time, and it can guide their daily planning. At the bottom of every week, we also just provide some additional support for in households when there is an option to do somewhat daily check-ins at the end. And so this is really just some guiding questions that parents can ask students, or that students can look at and reflect on, just to help them think about what they learned for that particular day, and potentially find any support any areas where their child is having problems. So again, this is week 1. At the bottom of a week 1 will be a little, you'll see here it says additional weeks of daily guidance will be available soon. That's referring to weeks 2 through 8. You can also go back to the top of the page where again, you can pick what week you're on. So that's what a first grade learning site will look like. And again, that's under parents and online. What we are hoping to do, I'm getting a couple questions that I do want to be able to answer. What we're hoping to do is actually be able to provide this entire page in Spanish as well. It's going to be, all of our translations that we're going to be doing should be expected about a week after the English versions. So we are going to be providing all of these setup instructions right here. This will be translated into Spanish for every site. And we will also make sure that these account instructions are set up in Spanish in every site. We cannot necessarily guarantee that the resources themselves will be in Spanish. So when they're working with a digital account, that might still be in English, but we'll have set up instructions in Spanish. And then we also will have, if we scroll back to the daily learning schedules here, we will have these Monday, Tuesday weekly charts in Spanish as well. So we will have a Spanish version for parents to look at and to walk through. The one thing I will flag is that the resources themselves are going to be a mix of English and Spanish based on what's available. So the guidance for parents should be translated shortly afterwards. So the next thing I want to go back to really quickly, and that's an example of the online materials that we're going to have available. I also talked a little bit about having a print material set available. So if we click on that, right now it looks the same. We have pre-K through 5th grade with week 1 available, and I'll click on first again. Right now it looks very, very similar, except some of the differences are that all of the activities actually shouldn't link you to any sort of platform that requires a student to be consistently online. So if I go to one-time setup instructions, for example, here it's really focused on how do I get the things I'm going to need printed, and how do I get the things in front of me that are going to be important for my student to be able to look at every day with pencil and paper. So that part is going to be a little bit different, and we'll talk a little bit more about printing and shipping in a second. But then the other thing that's different is some of the specific resources themselves. So for example, if I go to math, in the online version, this would have taken me to a program that has a blended learning program that gives me adaptive problems based on where I am, and provides some intervention support when I get something wrong. Whereas in the print version, if you click on it, it's actually a printable workbook that a student could print out and work on with pencil and paper at home. So it wouldn't be that digital tool. However, we recognize that with print versions, it's still pretty hard for someone to get online every day and be able to print the worksheets that they need. So what we're actually planning to do is have a full grade level packet that we put online here that you could access as a parent, either just print once if you want to get that full packet printed for your student, and then you would never have to log on to this site again for the rest of the 8 weeks. We also are going to think through, we'll talk about this in a second, but ways that districts can provide options to ship these grade level packets directly to parents so that parents actually wouldn't even have to worry about printing themselves. Now we're going to go over a quick overview of the resources that are included in this presentation. So one of the things and one of the objectives of this call is to really help you all think through, do I want to use this as a plug and play resource within my district, or do I want to adapt it, or do I actually think it's not relevant to me? So we just have a little bit of an overview of what this site is as well as what it's not, just to provide as much clarity as possible. So what it is a daily set of activity aligned to the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. It's a focus on activities really designed to engage students in a meaningful way in the home setting, recognizing that can actually look very different from a traditional classroom, where a student may not have a parent or teacher necessarily guiding them or supporting them. We focused heavily on trying to find parent-friendly resources for guiding students outside of the classroom, given they may not have the support of that full-time teacher. And again, this is an entirely optional resource to implement. So you could decide to do nothing with this site, and that is entirely okay. What Texas Home Learning is not is a continuation of any particular district's annual scope and sequence. Districts are doing so many different things, and what we really tried to focus on is just engaging activities at the grade level that could best support home learning. We also are not endorsing or recommending any particular set of resources or text at the state level, and nor are we requiring the use of any particular resource or text at the state. So what we really focused on doing is just trying to find resources that met a number of different criteria that we'll actually go into quickly on the next slide. So, great. So here, when we were looking at what we actually populated on the site, there was a number of things that we were trying to consider. So one of the first things we were trying to consider is, how do we maximize the feasibility of allowing parents to use all of the resources? So we were looking at all resources that were freely accessible to all parents to use digitally, as well as materials that we could freely print. We were looking at our ability to obtain the statewide license to post and print materials. What we actually found is that even if materials are digitally free, there's oftentimes copyright restrictions on printing. So we were looking at finding materials where we could do both. We were looking at the ability to print materials in high volumes on expedited timelines, because we did want to provide that statewide shipping option to districts. And then finally, we were trying to find versions of the materials that had similar supports in their digital and print versions. So for instance, if a teacher had a classroom of students that had some kids with access to technology and other kids without access to technology, their students would be doing similar things in their classroom. So when possible, we tried to solve for that. So everything we picked, we were trying to maximize this set of criteria around feasibility. And then for quality of learning, again, we were trying to focus on what could be very easy to use for parents and students in a home learning environment, recognizing that they may not have the support of a teacher the full time, for a full day. We were looking for alignment of materials to the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and making sure that the activities that students were focused on were very aligned. And then we were trying to maximize supports for all learners. So we've been trying very hard to find resources that are available in both English and Spanish, whenever possible. So again, trying to maximize as many of these criteria as possible in a particular grade in a particular subject. However, I do want to overly emphasize here that this is not necessarily a comprehensive list of quality criteria. It's a sample of what we were trying to consider when seeking to support districts as fast as possible to get this up and running during this time. So again, this is some of the considerations that we thought about whenever we selected resources. So we've provided a quick high-level overview of the approach. And again, we will have a lot of this available for you to look at on your own, to dive into on your own very, very shortly. We already have 1 week up for pre-K through 5, and then we will have at least the first week up for 6 through 12 by the end of the week, and then the full packets up by next week. So a lot of this you'll be able to look into directly on your own to determine if it's aligned with your district's approach. But on the highest of levels in pre-K, we focused on integrated activities using materials in the home and built around a weekly theme, for example, farm animals. In K-5 and ELAR and phonics, we started ELAR by focusing and encouraging daily reading routines and helping focus on building, supporting students in building those at home. So routines around reading, discussing what you're reading, and then writing about text of your choice. And then further on in the 8 weeks, we're transitioning to high quality weekly text sets with text dependent questions and aligned writing prompts. So again, really just trying to encourage that daily reading routine with students. And on the phonics side, looking at practicing sounds, letters, and words, and parent-led activities that will help our kindergartners and first graders do that. For K through 5 math and science, what we have focused on here is digital lessons or worksheets that focus on math skills. Oftentimes we try to pick a foundational math skill in that particular grade level. And then again, in some of our digital versions, the program can be adaptive to the student based on what questions they're getting right and wrong. For science and social studies, we tried to focus on key content and skills for the particular grade band with a daily routine that could include a mini lesson, a video, or an activity to apply that learning. And then in science in particular, we were thinking through some ways to add additional optional engagement activities using common household objects and materials. For 6 through 12, again, for English language arts and readings, we focused on building out high quality weekly text sets around a specific topic or theme. And with each passage with text sets includes a combination of text dependent multiple choice and short answer questions and/or a writing prompt for a longer essay. So again, trying to encourage daily and weekly reading and writing. For math and science, again, our focus was a combination of TEKS aligned review and new learning of content and skills that were specific to that grade level. So, we mentioned earlier, this isn't aligned to a particular scope and sequence, but we are trying to make it aligned to the TEKS at a particular grade level in the most appropriate way. And the best thing we would encourage you to do is across the different grades and across the different subject areas, take a look at the materials that are going to be provided and that should be up and available by for all 8 weeks by early next week, and see if your district is on board with the resources that are provided. If so, you can actually use the site as the direct plug and play. But again, we also, you can also adapt and modify this. Not directly on the website itself, but we'll provide all of these documents in editable formats so that if you wanted to change the resource in a subject or change grade level content, you would be able to do that and then deliver it to districts in your local context in your own way. So with that said, I'm going to transition a little bit to the grade level packets. So what we are also trying to do is all of the content on the website for a particular grade, we are pulling together into a grade level packet. So what the grade level packet will do is provide an overview of some of the exact same things that you saw on the website. So we'll have an introductory section that includes that one-time setup preparation around the learning goals and the parent roles and the recommended daily student routines. We'll have in that packet all of the weekly and daily schedules that are printed out, and we will also have the subject-specific breakout activities that we can pull together in print versions. So everything, all the printables, we will have printed out. So ELAR will have some printouts of the digital text that we link to. Math will have some of the worksheets that we link to, that sort of thing. So there'll be one full grade level packet that a district could print on their own or opt into statewide shipping and distribution services. These packets will be, well, okay, I'm gonna pause there. So one quick call out about the packets is that we do recognize in high school, oftentimes students in different grades are taking different courses. And so what we've done is show you what the packet is gonna include for 9th, 10th, and 11th and 12th grade students based on what we're planning to include. What we will also do, and this is what would be available in the version of the packet that you could opt into for statewide printing. So if you wanted to do statewide printing for high school, this is what would be included in your 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders packets. However, we will also provide links to the individual courses on the website. So let's say you sent all your 9th graders a packet, but then you also wanted them to be able to access world history content, which is in the 10th grade. You could still have that link, the PDF to the world history packet available on the website that you could think through how to get to students in your local context. So, this is just to make sure it's very clear what your 9th, 10th, and 11th and 12th grade students are going to get, given that we know that the website is more based on subject area in these grades and that it could vary across students. Okay, so Spanish versions of packets. So I know this is a number of questions that you all have had. So there will definitely be the English versions of packets, and then shortly following that, we will make available Spanish versions of packets. So for pre-K through 5, all introductory text and daily schedules will be translated into Spanish for parents. And then for pre-K through 5, all student materials we should also have available in Spanish. So for pre-K through 5, we should have a full packet in Spanish, including the resources that the specific daily activities show and link to in the packet. For grades 6 through 12, there is, in ELAR only, there's a mix of Spanish and English resources provided. So for 6 through 12, the majority of the packet will be in English. The way that we'll, again, make all of these packets available online that any district could select and pick. But if you're thinking about shipping options, whenever you're requesting shipping, there'll be a place in your data request where you can upload your household language and your student language pulled from your PEIMS code, and that will actually help us figure out who should get what type of packet based on the particular mailing address. So we'll provide more guidance on that in the specific directions for shipping. Yes, so again, pre-K through grade 5, packets available in English and Spanish. And then in grades 6 through 12, only ELAR has a mix of Spanish and English, but the rest of the packet will be in English. Some additional considerations. So currently, not all resources are classified as open education resources with a Creative Commons license. That just means that not all resources are resources that you could necessarily, on a normal day, kind of pick up and use and modify in your own local context. However, TEA has obtained approval from all publishers to post and print all resources for free during this time. So again, the licensing isn't fully open, but all resources on this site are freely accessible and printable during this time. For printing services, we've continued to talk about this and reference it throughout this presentation, but there will be options for printing. And then I do want to quickly pause and spend a little, highlight progress monitoring. So for progress monitoring, really all grading and progress monitoring policies should be determined by the district. So, oh, sorry, I just clicked out something. So TEA does not require that student packets be returned to teachers or the district as a part of using this resource. There's no state level grading requirement around this resource. This is purely really districts and schools should be driving this locally. So there's nothing that we are doing related to a requirement here. What we do, however, do is in some of our teacher guidance, we will provide them with just high-level guidance on how they can support monitoring the progress of students for the purposes of enhancing learning and support locally. So we'll provide that guidance to the extent that it's helpful. We've also done our best to try to find tools that actually provide some progress monitoring supports to teachers and or parents that can help them look at how their student is progressing in a particular day over the course of the 8 weeks. But again, none of this is a requirement. And really it's a district's choice how they want to set up their grading policies as it relates to home learning. So again, we've said this a couple times. I'm going to reiterate one more time. What's available today? Complete week 1 daily schedules for pre-K and through grade 5 for the online and print versions. You can find both of those at texasHomeLearning.org. What's available by the end of the week is complete week 1 daily schedules for 6 through 12 for online and print, and then some additional weekly schedules added for pre-K through 5. So one of the reasons this is important is if a district if they were really excited about this and they wanted to get their kids started as early as next week, they should be able to send out this link to parents with some guidance, and all of those parents should be able to access the week 1 of learning in whatever grade their student is in. And then we would just call out for them that the week 2 will come before the actual week 2 of learning comes in their household. What is available by the end of next week? So we should have the week 1 through 8 complete for all grades for online and print resources, as well as those downloadable PDFs of the grade level print packets. So, so all of those resources will be available online for districts, parents, teachers, students to access. I do want to transition now a little bit to print and distribution. So print and distribution options for districts. We've really kind of bucketed this into there's 3 different approaches a district could take in thinking about how to support printing and distribution and how to get print packets to families. The first is access the statewide printing services that we are making available. So in this instance, districts will pay some average per student amount, which we'll get to in a second, for a grade level print packet that includes the 8 weeks of the daily schedules and all the supporting resources. Those packets will be shipped directly to families, and we'll go in a little bit to the specific process in a second. If they don't want to do that, you can also organize printing locally. So you can set up your own print and distribution operations to print resources for families. And what we are working on doing is providing you with a list of printing and distribution vendors that have some availability to support these services. So we'll be posting that as soon as we have it available. And then finally, what we're also hoping to do is just make sure that all of the packets are printable and downloadable from the websites. So you could also rely on parents to print at home, although recognize that that may not not every parent will be able to do that. So really you can think about this in a number of different ways in your local context. The decision around what print option you choose may be driven by how you seek to use Texas home learning. So the one thing I just want to be overly clear about is that if you choose option 1 and you want to access the statewide printing services, you can't make any direct changes to the statewide packets. So we'll be able to print the grade level packets that are included as a part of texasHomeLearning.org and get those shipped directly to families for you. But if you want to modify the content in any way, and if you want to customize the content for your local service, you may have to move to this option 2 of shipping, where you organize locally how you're going to print and ship materials to your parents. And again, we're going to try to provide resources for districts around how they, some potential vendors they could work with to do this. So what's included in statewide printing? Not to be overkill, but grade level packets printed and shipped directly to households. And what will happen here is the district will provide us with a list of mailing addresses that they want to be included in this shipment. Households will generally receive packets 5 to 10 days after their order is approved, with the exception of PO boxes, which slows down delivery a little bit. Timelines may vary based on overall order volume, but once an order is submitted, our vendor can provide you with some additional clarity on their order timeline once your order is received and approved. The districts, I do want to pause here a little bit because we're going to get into pricing. So districts pay a per student amount that we're estimating between $20 and $45 per packet. And we're going to actually plan to provide a little bit more information on this in a webinar on Monday. But really the reason that you see this vary so much is that it actually is going to depend on a district's specific data. So within this range, what it really considers is the size of the packet by grade level, so that each grade level packet is going to be different sizes. It also includes there's going to be significant cost savings if there's more students in a household, because we can combine packets together as well. And so why we gave this very wide range is because it really can vary significantly by district in terms of average students per household and in terms of what grades they end up purchasing, because each packet is different sizes. So again, this is just a range on what it's going to cost. One other thing to highlight is that districts will very likely be able to request reimbursement for printing and distribution. We do not have this as a guarantee yet, but as a part of the COVID crisis, we do think it will be likely that all of the printing and distribution fees, this per student fee that we're talking about, will be able to be reimbursed. So again, we're going to provide a little bit more visibility into what pricing is going to look like by Monday. But right now you should estimate the range being $20 to $45 per student. And that is the cost for the full packet. So once you pay that cost per student, that student gets that full 8-week packet. So it includes all the setup, all of the 8 weeks of instruction, and then all of the supporting materials that that student's going to need to go to for that 8 weeks. And unfortunately, you cannot request the weeks that you want. We're going to be printing the full first grade packet, and that's what's going to be shipped. We will again post the packet, so if you wanted to adapt them and or modify them any way, you can do that, and then figure out how to ship locally. But for the statewide shipping services, the packets are going to be the full grade level with the exact sets of resources that you're going to see online. So what's included, we kind of talked about this a little bit. So how to access statewide printing service. Here's a high level overview of the process. So a district downloads a template from the TEA website. This template, if it's not already updated, will be updated will be on the website now. What we've tried to do is make it make it so that districts can just do a direct data pull from their student information systems to populate this template. But they'll download it. They will complete their data pull to upload their mailing address into the template provided, and then they will submit their template directly to the printing vendor at this email address. So once they have completed their data packet, it will get sent to them. Our vendor will review that submission for accuracy just to make sure that it has the cells filled out right, and then it will accept the order on a first come first served basis. So we will fulfill print orders in the order that a district submission is approved. They will also send an email confirmation to the school district once an order is accepted, just so you all are aware that your order has been accepted and moving forward. The next step is, once your order is accepted, we highly recommend that that a district notifies the families that they should receive the packet, and we will provide a sample communication that you can send. But we are not planning to reach out to families specifically on your behalf. So if you place an order directly to families, we highly recommend you notify them that they should be receiving a packet from the vendor coming soon, so they're not surprised when something shows up on their doorstep, especially during this time. Then what will happen is the vendor will begin your order, print your order, and then ship packets directly to the mailing addresses you provided on your list. In the majority of cases, the packets going to one particular mailing address will all be combined in the same box. So that one family is getting all their packets at once. There might be some slight exceptions if between Spanish and English. And then lastly, TEA is planning to pay the vendor directly so that shipping can be expedited during this time of emergency. So all you have to do right now as a district is submit your data packet, and we will take care of getting the shipping taken care of immediately. What we will then do is provide districts with future guidance on how to reconcile this purchase. But again, it's nothing that has to be done immediately. Districts should use pricing on the previous slide, and then the additional pricing information we provide on Monday for budgeting purposes. So if you're trying to figure out, can I afford this printing and distribution option, we'll try to provide that guidance to do it, but you aren't necessarily going to have to figure out anything with payment for the shipping right now. And then again, if for any reason any of the pricing changes, we will notify you immediately. So this is what the final template looks like is for those of you who want to prepare your districts. If you are interested in accessing statewide printing, we're collecting district and campus information. We're collecting the name, a household name, as well as a household language, an email, and a phone number, and that's purely for the purposes of tracking the tracking information for UPS and FedEx. We have the mailing address itself, and then we have the student information where we really just need to know the student's grade to make sure the student gets the right packet, and then the student language. So the couple things I'll flag here, the home language and the student language are important to think about because that's going to trigger what version of the packet that the student receives. So if the student, if the home language is Spanish, we will try to provide that the guidance in Spanish. Similar to the student language is Spanish, we'll try to make sure they have access to Spanish materials. This is only really an option for Spanish. We don't have languages beyond Spanish at this time. District guidance on decision-making. I'm just going to do a quick time check. Okay, district guidance on decision-making. So we've talked about this a little bit, but again, there's really multiple options that districts can think about whenever they're thinking about whether or not they want to use the Texas Home Learning site. So they can adopt the Texas Home Learning site directly as a resource they want to provide to parents and students. Some of the benefits are, you can send it as soon as this week if you would like. You can order the grade level print packets to have them shipped. And then you can focus your time and energy on supporting quality implementation and supporting teachers and how they can help support the families in using the model. Again, this means that you cannot adapt the learning plans based on your local needs if you choose to adopt directly. However, there is another option to modify Texas home learning plans for your local context. And so some of the benefits here are that you can use all of the existing templates that we've built and just substitute anything that you need to meet your local needs. So you could substitute a particular, you could decide to substitute just for one grade because you want to do a different grade differently. You could say, I like everything except math, and I'm just going to substitute math. You can do whatever you want in the context of these templates, and we'll make them editable for you so that you can easily change them. However, if you do change them, you cannot access statewide printing, at least in the 1.0 version. Mainly because that would just cause a number of different print scenarios that we're not able to support at this time. And then finally, districts may also continue their existing plans and do entirely nothing with this site. You could look at this and say, we've actually already put something in place. We feel pretty good about it. And we don't need to introduce this into the context for our families and our students. So again, many options, and it's entirely up to the district. So this is actually looks like a lot. So this is a timeline of what it could look like for you. So in the most expedited timeline possible, when you're trying to think about your print resources, this is what it could look like. We will have finalized print packets available on the Texas Home Learning website by Tuesday. So if you want to look at what all of the packets are going to look like that are available for printing, they'll be ready on Tuesday. And then at that same time, if you as a district submit your addresses, your data template by Tuesday, families are estimated to receive those packets by that following Monday. So really next week, if you decided you wanted to use Texas Home Learning, if you got us your parent addresses, and then you spent time, communicating with districts and parents that, you wanted to adopt the Texas Home Learning model, you could do all of that next week. And they, in theory, should be able to start by the week of the 20th, Monday the 20th. 420, and then you would see that the 8 weeks of learning would go through the beginning of June. Recognize that some districts may not want to do the full 8 weeks, and they may want to communicate that they recommend families do less than 8 weeks. But we wanted to provide 8 weeks because we know that there are a number of districts that had kind of extended spring breaks due to the process. So there may have been 2 or 3 weeks where kids were not necessarily provided with a week-by-week learning plan, and so they may want to extend a little bit further. So again, entirely up to the district how they look at whether or not they use the 8 weeks or part of the 8 weeks. But in theory, this is kind of the most expedited timeline we could push from a printing perspective. Again, all timelines can be modified by districts. Also, a district may submit print orders at any point through the end of April at a minimum. If we're finding that districts are really interested in ordering after April, we can look at extending that. But you do, in this visual above, we have where the star is that districts are submitting packets on, Tuesday of next week. If districts want more time and they don't want to submit their orders until the week of the 20th, that is perfectly fine. Or if they submit a set of orders on the week of the 13th and they want to submit a second set of orders on the week of the 20th, that's also totally fine. So it's really just whenever the district is ready to send their orders, recognizing that once you send an order, you still should plan to receive, for there to be about a 5 to 10 day delay as to when that household actually gets that packet on their doorstep. So if you wait a week to send in your orders, you're potentially waiting an additional week or two for those households to start their learning plans with their packets. Great. So, and again, this is for print only. The digital version of this, in theory, you could start directing your parents towards as early as next week, because week 1 for all grades will be up. So we've included just some guidance on questions. We're getting short on time, so I'm not going to go through these in detail. There's guiding questions for considering use in the model where you adopt directly, and then in the model where you modify learning. It's really the end of this presentation. This website is going to be posted on our Texas, on our actual website here. So again, in our instructional continuity planning page, which you can go to, which is where we've been uploading all of our resources. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you have the Texas Home Learning site. And then at the very bottom right here, you'll see it says Texas Home Learning Webinar. Right here, we will include both this presentation as well as the recording of this presentation so that you can access both however you want. What you will also be able to see is the finalized Excel version of the print template that you can access, and that's what you would submit to home learning. So right now, it looks like the sample template is still open, but the Excel should be posted. The final template should be posted within the day.
And Kristen, I think if you refresh, the PowerPoint is actually already posted, and the webinar is posted for tomorrow's superintendent call. So I know Kristen mentioned we're getting short on time. We've got a bunch of wonderful questions, and we're going to work to make sure we get you answers to those questions. We'll have some updates on tomorrow's superintendent's call. And as Kristen mentioned, we'll schedule another webinar for Monday next week. So if you have additional questions, you're welcome to email disasterinfo@tea.texas.gov in the meantime. And thank you so much, Kristen, and thank you so much to all of our participants. Sorry we didn't leave quite as much time for questions today as we had planned.